angol nyelvű előadás következik. Az előadásnak a címe The New Playbook for Leaders, és L.David Marquet következik, aki a Turn the Ship Around szerző tulajdonos igazgató. Az előadásról röviden annyit, hogy why do we run meetings the way we do? Why do we use the words we use when communicating and asking questions? Turns out, most of us are using language, meeting formats, and organizational design inherited from the industrial age, where the leaders were the thinkers and the workers were the doers. In today's work environment, we want every team member to be a thinker and a doer. This makes industrial age language obsolete. Instead of running industrial age plays better, we need to cast them aside from a new playbook. So let's see what the new playbook looks like.
Hello, everybody. Thanks. So today I'm going to tell you a story, and I have a hypothesis. And I want to start with a question, though. The question is this. Recent study in the United States found that toxic workplaces are the 5th leading cause of death, and that toxic workplaces cost U.S. companies $223 billion. What is the source of this toxicity? I was a submarine commander, so I can imagine there is some legitimate stress there, but why is work so stressful and why is it so toxic? Why do we have events like this? This is the Deepwater Horizon spill. 5 million gallons of oil, 5 million barrels of oil went into the Gulf of Mexico. 11 people died. Then we have the Volkswagen scandal. We have Boeing 737 MAX. 346 people died in 2 airplane crashes. What is the cause of this? Well, let me tell you a story, and I have a hypothesis about this, and we're all part of the solution. So I was a submarine officer in the United States Navy. Well, what is it like? As you can imagine, it's very crowded. It's very cramped. So here we have where the sailors sleep, the bunks over here, and these are torpedoes. The green shape is a torpedo. We actually have sailors sleeping in the torpedo room. We have 150 people at sea, but we only have 117 bunks. So we actually have people sharing bunks, and one person's in the bunk. They get up and they go on duty. The other person gets in the bunk. It can still be warm from the body heat. And here's what another bunking space looks like. And this is all this private space the sailor is going to have for the next 6 months. We call this the wardroom. This is the officer's dining room. And the way we sit here is in a very specific order. It's exactly by hierarchy. Hierarchy dictates everything in the submarine force. Even 2 officers with the same rank aren't exactly the same level of hierarchy. We all are listed in series in a big book that the Navy has, and everyone is in a long row. When I was taught leadership, my leadership definition looked like this. Leadership can be defined as directing the thoughts, plans, and actions of others so as to obtain and command their obedience, confidence, respect, and their loyal cooperation. Now, when I was shown this book, I was only 17 years old, and I was at this big institution that was run by the government. Who was I to question this? And to be honest, I actually liked it, and I was very good at this. I was good at telling people what to do, and I liked it because that made me feel important. And my team went out there, and I would get them to do things. I would do the thinking, and they would do the doing. And since I was good at that, the Navy promoted me, and they said, well, you're going to be a submarine commander. I was initially assigned to take this submarine. And after 12 months of schooling, I was about to go to the submarine, and they said, no. You're going to go to a different submarine, this submarine, the Santa Fe. Now, if you look carefully at these 2 submarines, even though they look mostly the same, you can see a difference. The Santa Fe has a smooth sail, and the Olympia has these planes. The Santa Fe was a different kind of submarine. So now it was one of the newest ships in the fleet. I'd never been on that kind of submarine. The first time I stepped on the submarine, I was about to take over as the captain. And I didn't know how all the equipment worked. But as a captain, I'm supposed to give orders. So I get dressed up and I try and exude confidence, even though inside I didn't really feel that way. Now, you may think, oh, submarine commander, you have a lot of power. Yeah, maybe. But here's some things that were not in my control. Who was on my team, what positions they were in, the resources that I had, and our schedule. Now, the other wrinkle to the story is the reason I went to this other submarine at the very last minute is because their captain quit because it was the worst performing submarine in the fleet. They had the lowest morale and they had the lowest retention, which is how many sailors that they could keep, and they had the lowest performance. So now I have the worst performing ship, and here's the thing though, it's a ship that I don't know all the buttons to, and I can't control any of this stuff. So my real feeling was more like this. So this is the control room in the submarine, and here you see Sailor Garcia is steering the submarine, and he has a knob in front of him where he adjusts the speed. And we're going to run an exercise where we put the submarine on a backup motor. Now, all the older submarines, this backup motor had 2 gears. So it was like first gear and second gear on your car. But on the Santa Fe, there's only 1 gear. Now, I only had 2 weeks to get ready for the Santa Fe, and I spent most of my time just getting to meet the crew and the officers. And so one of the things I didn't know was that Santa Fe only had 1 gear. So we run the exercise. It's the very first day at sea. I'm the brand new captain. The crew is demoralized because their captain quit, because they're the worst submarine in the fleet. And there's an officer who's running this, and he shifts into first gear, which is the right thing to do because we're shutting down the reactor and pretending it's broken. And so first gear saves the battery. Well, I get the clever idea. If we go to second gear, it'll drain the battery faster and it'll be less time for the engineers to find the problem. It'll put stress on my team. And I suggest this to the officer, and he says, and he orders it without even a hesitation. I say, hey, why don't we go to second gear? And he says, second gear to this sailor right here. And the sailor makes this kind of a face. And I said, what's going on? And he said, Captain, on the Santa Fe, it's only a 1-speed motor. There is no second gear. So it was an order that couldn't be achieved. And I looked at the officer who had been on board for 2 years. I said, did you know about this? And he said, yes, sir, I did. And he gives him this annoying smile. And I said, well, why did you order it if you knew there was no second gear? He said, because you told me to. And my head went, because in the past, when I gave bad orders, what I needed to do was give better orders. But on a submarine where I didn't know where any of these, all these other switches that you see, I didn't really know exactly how they worked. I knew the theory, but not the specifics. That wasn't the solution. The only solution was I could not be the person giving orders. So instead of me being the person giving better orders, in my mind, I said, I need to create a team that does not need to be told what to do. They come to me without being told what to do. And we started doing that through language. We made a deal. We shook hands. We said, okay, I'm going to never give an order. So imagine a movie where a submarine commander never gives an order to the crew. How's that work? The crew comes to him. The officers would come to me and say, Captain, I intend to, and this was their key word, I intend to submerge the ship. I intend to load a torpedo. I intend to start the reactor. And I would just say, okay, very well, sounds good. And then they would be doing it. So I could still stop things, but I wasn't initiating anything anymore. All the initiation came from the team. And I'll show you a tool. This is the way we did it. We call this the ladder of leadership. And all it is we change the way we talk to each other. So in the old way, when someone would say, tell me what to do, the boss would tell them what to do. If someone said, hey, I have a problem, what should I do? The boss would say, okay, do this. So we would resist telling them what to do. And we would say, instead, what do you see? Tell me more. How do you see it? What do you know that I don't know? And it's description. It relies upon observation and description. Why? Because observation and description is safe. So we're just taking a very small step. We're not saying, oh, no, you tell me what we should do. That's too much. We're just saying, tell me what you see. And then they would say, well, here's what I see. And then we'd say, well, tell me what you think. And they would say, well, here's what I think is going on. Well, tell me what you'd like to do. Well, what I'd like to do is this. Well, tell me what you intend to do. I intend to. Now, the difference between what I would like to do and what I intend to do is small, but very important. When someone says, here's what I would like to do, here's what I request permission to do, this is the way most organizations are run. The answer is no, unless you hear yes. So if you send an email, I would like to do this. We're thinking about launching the product next week. We're thinking about delaying the product launch. We're thinking about doing more testing. When it's asked as level 4, you're waiting for an answer. You don't have permission to do it, which means you don't really own it. But when you go at level 5 and say, hey, next week, we're going to delay product launch. I intend to delay the launch of the product for more testing. And you never hear back from your boss. It doesn't matter. You're still okay. You're still going to do it. And this small difference makes a huge impact on how it feels to be in the organization, because now we own our jobs. And the boss is no longer trying to control us. So for a product launch, let's give another example. Hey, the product launch is scheduled next week. I'm a little nervous about the testing. What do you want me to do? Again, we don't tell them what to do. We say, well, tell me more about that. Well, this is these are the results of the testing, so on. So they're telling that's what I see. Okay, well, what do you think's going on? I think it's really getting complex. And there's some potential vulnerabilities that we haven't explored yet. Okay, so what would you like to do? I'd really like to do more testing. Okay, so what do you intend to do? I intend to delay product launch a week and do more testing. Great. I'll tell the CEO, or we'll make a public statement. And so that's the way it would work. And we would apply this every single day, every opportunity we had where we would talk about decisions, we would try, and what we use the word is invite people higher on the ladder. Now, higher on the ladder is good because it gets more thinking and more engagement, but it also requires more vulnerability. But again, level 5 is the sweet spot. Too many people say, oh, I want to go to level 6, just do it. The problem is now I don't hear about it until after the work is done. So what we think one of the major causes of stress is that people are in an organization where they don't have full control they don't feel like they have control over the work. And at the same time, as a boss, you're trying to control other people. And this mismatch between what you can control and what you're trying to control is a huge source of stress on both sides, whether we're under controlling or over controlled. But when you get this right, you can do things like this. We're bringing a special forces team onto the submarine. There's not a lot of room on the submarine. So when we want to launch a SEAL team or a special forces team, they have to fly out. And so they fly out in the helicopter. Now the guys in orange, that's me up there on the sail and the submarine crew, 2 guys on deck. And the SEAL team, they're in that sort of greenish and they're coming down. Now imagine you're the person at the far end of that submarine. You're holding the rope for the helicopter. We're moving, the helicopter's moving, the wind is shifting, waves are coming, a lot can happen. There's no time to say, what should I do? and no one can hear you because there's a helicopter right there. And for me, when I'm sitting on the bridge, this is what I see. I can't even see it. I'm still totally responsible for what happens. This picture is exactly relevant for all leaders and people in today's workplaces because the work is becoming invisible. The work used to be I'm running a sewing machine. I could see the things moving. But now the work is more and more in my head, and so we can't see that. So the way we are managing work is about visual work, and that's not the way work is anymore. The word we use is push authority to information, push the control of decisions to the people who have the most information about the decision. If the software engineering team has the most information about the complexity of the product and how ready it is to be launched. So they're the ones who should be making the decision about whether the product gets launched or not. And my hypothesis is that the reason we have this dysfunctional approach to over control and under control comes from the industrial age. And in this picture, this is a radio factory before World War II. And in this picture, you see the two groups of people. You see the thinker or the boss or the leader, and then all the doers. We separated people into two groups: leaders, followers, management, workers, deciders, and doers. And so we had language for these two different groups, and we often wore different kinds of clothes when we went to work. And the problem here is that we can't have most or half the organization just doing what they're told. And most fundamentally, this has to be a coercive way of managing people, because leaders have to get the doers to do what the leaders decided for them to do. So you're always in the position of trying to get someone else to do it. That was what the old playbook for leadership was. We've inherited this playbook from the industrial age, and we're now using it in a modern age, and it just doesn't work. And we have I'll give you some small examples. Lots of people they add the word right, at least in English language. They say, so we should delay product launch, right? Well, what is that? That's a micro coercion. It just makes it harder for the other person to say, wrong. I think we should launch on time, or whatever the opposite position is. So what we want to say is, first of all, we withhold our own opinion, say, well, what do you think about product launch? And here's another example. People ask binary questions. Someone on your team comes up to you and says, I think we should delay product launch. Are you sure? Binary question. Answers yes or no. Now they're in a box, because what does that really mean? And whatever they say, you don't really learn anything, because they may be 99% sure or only 1% sure. So you say, how sure are you? Start the question with the word how. So the tools are: invite people up the ladder, start your questions with the word how, and listen to your language and listen to all those little micro coercions, because the language is designed to get people to do what they're told, not to get them to think. So the new leadership playbook is all about getting people to think, not just doing what they're told. And so the source of stress is, I'm trying to control people. All day long as a leader, I'm trying to control people. Or as a worker, I'm being controlled by somebody else. That is why we have toxic workplaces. And so if we can realign the control, so I'm only focusing on controlling myself, I control my language, and I can influence others that way, but it always goes back to me. Now I'd like to go ahead and open it up to a discussion.
Hi, David. My name is Christian. I'm the speaker.
Hey, Chris.
So let's talk a little bit about the books. What book have you recommended the most to leaders to CEOs beside yours, of course?
So there's a couple of books. One, the Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that started me down my journey. Another book, Mindset by Carol Dweck, really changed the way I thought about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And here's a little secret book, which I think is just absolutely brilliant. It's called,
Which?
It's called How to Talk to Children So Children Will Listen, and How to Listen So Children Will Talk. It's got a long title, but it really is magic when it comes to understanding the impact of language on people.
Okay, meanwhile, we got some questions from the audience. So here, so there is some. How do you teach leaders to realize that they only control themselves? I mean, we are not socialized like that.
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing. I think I stopped sharing. So I agree. We are not socialized like that. We are told that as leaders, we need to make things happen. We need to get the team to do stuff. And so what happens is we're trying to control people all the time. For me, I needed this big event where I realized that trying to control people was not going to get us to success. That I needed to actually, over and over and over again, I was told, lean in, lean in, lean in. And I would direct, and they would report, and I would call them you're my direct reports. That's why we call people that. And I realized that's all backwards. What I need to do is lean back and say, well, you lean now, I'm giving space for you to lean into me. I think the best way to do it is to imagine how you want your boss to treat you, not how they are treating you, but how you want them to treat you. And the other metaphor is, and I'm a little careful with this, but parenting, I think you start with controlling. You have to control your child because you have to tell them, put on your seatbelt. But 18 years from now, they're going to leave. And so it's this gradual process of leaning back so that they understand they don't need to be told, put on my seatbelt. They don't need to be told to be any more about being good people. But so it's this gradual leaning back and letting go. And that's a model for you. Okay.
There's another one. How can you influence the owner bottom up towards this new playbook culture?
Yeah, that is really hard. And that's unfortunately, it's one of the top questions that we get. And I think what you do is you set an example on your team, and then your team is happy, your team is producing well, and ideally your boss will notice. But when you think about the latter, if you're the one who's being told what to do, don't go and say, well, here's what I think we should do instead. That's too big of a jump. And it's all about making it safe. Small and choice makes it safe. So you go to your boss, say, hey, would you like to know how this is your decision? We will support you. So first of all, it's not an authority contest of authority. Then you say, would you like to know what we see? That's it doesn't require any vulnerability. Sure. What do you see? Okay. Now next week, what do you know? Now next week, what would you guys like to do? And so you can move yourself up that way, but it's not guaranteed to work.
Okay. In general, what is the leader's reaction to the essence of your speech?
The reaction. So many companies around the world, we say, hey, would you like less stress in your life? And would you like to have a team that has more thinking, more engagement, more ownership, and a bias for action? And by the way, you don't need to buy any software to do this. You just need to change the way you talk. And they all go, yeah, that sounds great. And then I tell them a story and they say, I'm on board. And then they go back to work and they say, well, tell me what to do. I said, well, I just told you Well, I'm waiting for someone to tell me to start. Like, that's the whole thing. You have to just start. It's like learning a language or learning a skill or soccer. It's not about, you have everything in your head. You already have, everybody in the audience already has enough in their head right now to start. All you start doing is when people come to you saying, tell me what to do, you don't tell them what to do. Here's a way of practicing it. Every time you go out to a restaurant, don't order. See if you can get the server, the waiter, or the waitress to pick your meal for you. And this will be you practicing delegation in a place that it doesn't really matter, but you don't even know what you're going to get until they put it in front of you. So I want you to feel the sense of letting go, but also some anxiety, and you have to make it safe for that person.
So there is one more interesting one. Can you imagine an organization or team that's performing well without a leader?
That would be very hard for me to imagine. But the way we describe it is everybody's a leader. So what we say is everybody's a follower and everybody's a leader. But we follow the principles of the organization. We follow our purpose and the principles and the values of the organization. Everybody, including the top person. And everybody's a leader in terms of interpreting my actions and decisions and aligning them to those objectives and coordinating with the people around me. So we say those are all leaders. I think there is a role for leadership and hierarchy in the sense that leaders structure the organization and they design the interactions in a way that make it easier for people to be like this.
Okay, and we have a lot of questions, so I try to select. So, for example, there is an interesting one. What happened with the submarine?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you. So we had So we had a great story. We won all these awards. We got the highest score in the history of the Navy for operating our submarine. We went from 10% retention to 100%. 33 sailors, over the next year, 33 sailors had the chance to leave the Navy, and every single one of them said they wanted to stay. So that was a record, but that's not why I wrote the book. I left the submarine after 3 years, and the submarine continued to win awards, and 10 officers went through all the ranks, went to department head, second in command, and 10 officers were selected to be commanding officers. So you could go someplace and you can issue a bunch of orders, and if you're right, you can fix it. But when you leave, what happens? It goes back the way it was. So the reason I wanted to tell the story is because when you do it this way, you're building more leaders. You're scaling thinking. You're scaling leadership. You're scaling the greatness of the company, and it goes into the people. It's not about you and your personality.
Okay, and one more left. What is your way or tool for getting leaders to redirect the focus of their control?
Well, we have them do little exercises at home, like go to dinner, don't order. Now, because you're staying home because of the COVID, so we do a little. One of the first things we do with executive groups is we run an exercise where we say, what really matters to you? What is it that you got to be in control of at home? And people say things like what movie we're going to watch, or how to fold the laundry, or the next book that I'm going to read, or the next car that we're going to buy. There's a whole list of things that people say, where we're going to go on vacation. And so I said, okay, great. Pick one of those and give up control to another person, your partner, a friend. Let somebody else. Let's take the next book to read. Let someone else choose for you the next book you're going to read. And if you do that, you're going to practice you get the same sense that I had, which is, oh, it's exciting because I might get a recommendation that I would have never chosen for myself, but it's also a little bit scary because, well, what if I don't like it? And so you're going to be telling the person, hey, I like history books, or I like fiction, or whatever it is you like. And so you're providing clarity, but they're going to make the decision for you.
David, thank you very much for your talk, for your great presentation. It was really inspiring. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Thank you very much.